Welcome to the Supper Talk podcast, where we have all those dinner time conversations that no one really wants to have with their family. I'm Chris, and this is my dad, Steve.
Howdy.
Today, we're going to tackle all the topics that are probably not going to, save the world, but it'll at least give us something to talk about this week. Uh, we're coming in a little bit later in our recording than normally. We usually record on Wednesdays, but this has been a bit of a hectic week for both of us. So we're actually recording on Saturday, and it's going to be a little bit of a tight turnaround before we get this episode out. But you had finals this week.
I did. I
Yeah.
had
So what's
finals.
how's things going?
They went. I'm waiting on a couple grades, but I know I mean, I could really bomb my tests and still get in the 90s. So,
Still suck
um,
at speaking Greek.
man, that Greek class, I just tell you, because see, here's the real frustrating thing for me about it, because so like everybody who's in my program has to take a graduate level class in Greek and Hebrew, both. So, so last term, so both in the semester, but last term I did Greek, and this term I did Hebrew. But there's two different classes you can take at each one. You can take introductory Greek or introductory Hebrew, or you can take Greek tools and Hebrew tools. So I took the tools because there are we talk about AI a lot,
Is it
but
like
there are
codexes and stuff like that that'll help you with the language?
that's exactly right. And
Okay.
so like if you're not gonna there unless you're gonna take like 3 years at least of one of those languages, you're gonna have to choose between the two, and you're gonna take a few years, like every term you're gonna be taking Hebrew, every term you're gonna be taking Greek or whatever, and you really want to learn languages, and there are a lot of people in my program that do that. They would take the introductory class, and then they would take it like in their first term. They would take those introductory classes, and then they would start taking more advanced classes after that. But for other people like me, I mean, I'm interested in counseling and developmental psychology. I'm not really interested in ancient languages.
You don't want to speak Greek to people that are in need?
No, I do not. There's
You're telling me that that's not going to be beneficial in the moment?
So when I took the Greek class, it was really, really helpful. I mean, it was great because just like you mentioned, codexes and lexicons and how to use those. Because I mean, sometimes when you open up some of those really, really specialized language books, there's not like an answer key, and there's just like a half of a page entry on a single word, and you don't know what half of the entries mean. So they explained that, and it was helpful. Hebrew, I mean, it's like, so we learned the alphabet, and we learned a small vocabulary grouping, and a little bit of syntax, grammar, and stuff.
Now, are you
But
taking both languages at the same time?
no, I took Greek first and then Hebrew.
Okay.
Um,
That
but
would be way too much to handle all at once, I think.
yeah, I think that's how you would do it if you were a language person and you were gonna
Okay.
like, yeah. So if you were like really really trying to get it, you're gonna cram as much language into your degree as you possibly can. Because that's how I am. I mean, every open class that I've had, both in undergraduate and in graduate, has I take some kind of a psychology course, some kind of a counseling course, because that's what I'm trying to, you know, fill in all the gaps with in my degree. So if that's what you're going to do with language, then that's that they would be
That's your
doing
thing.
that. That's their thing. It's just that. So like I learned party tricks. So like I could say, oh, I know 5 words in Hebrew that I can still remember, and just silly little things like watch me, draw a particular character or whatever, and so that's it. I mean, I spent the entire term learning a party trick, and they didn't even mention any kind of tools. So I'm like, well, why did I take the tools class if they weren't going to use if they weren't? But it's one of those things. So like the professor wrote the textbook, and uh, and in order to change the class to teach tools, they'd have to use a different textbook. There's and like so uh, so to a certain extent, he's a credentialed professor who's driving book sales, which is just
Yeah.
unfortunate, really,
Which
really
it's like
unfortunate.
let's not get rid of the thing that's fueling the whole bus.
Yeah, but it's just like it's like AI. It's like pretending that tools don't exist
Yeah.
doesn't make those tools go away.
That's
And
so I was did you see the email that the head of Fiverr sent out to the entire organization?
no,
Oh, this was amazing for me because when I started the barber story, the very first company that I used was Fiverr. And if you've never used them, it's freelancers online. You can get really great logos made, you can get freelance art, you can get songs made. There are a bunch of really creative people on Fiverr. And you can get stuff for really cheap. So when I did my first shop logo, which I don't have any of that, I paid some guy in Pakistan $40 and it was an awesome logo. And then when I could eventually afford the ability to hire a local artist, I hired a local artist to do local art for a local business. And that was the thing that I would prefer doing. But Fiverr was this really great way of being able to incubate my idea. And the CEO of Fiverr sent an email out to everyone that said, AI is coming out for your job and it's coming for mine too. And I'm saying this because I love all of you. And I would not be saying this, like if I was selling you platitudes, I wouldn't love and care about you. But what was easy is going to be non-starter now. What was hard is going to be easy. What was considered impossible is now only going to be hard. If you are only doing the same thing that you've been doing, you will be out of a job because if you guys are pretending that this isn't going to impact you, you're wrong. And like it's just a very straightforward email to the entire organization at Fiverr talking about how you need to recognize this thing. The writing is on the wall. It's not just coming, it's here. And like that's the whole thing about my so while we took the Wednesday off, I had a whole day to build all of the foundational framework for
yeah, that graphic that you put on your Instagram channel is fantastic.
the Don't
That's
Worry the Robots Took Over.
that was really a a really great graphic, and it had a lot of detail in there that you know, and that's all prompt work. And now with
Yeah.
Chat GPT has this, you can iterate because it has memory.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah, and so I there are some things that I have been more successful in. There's other things that I'm still struggling with. So like last week I was talking about all the tools that I wanted to make for the podcast. They didn't work as well as I hoped they would. But that's okay, because I'm still learning a lot of that stuff, and that's the point. Is I'm intentionally breaking things. I'm trying to learn. I want to be able to figure out as much as I can, but I have been able to build the process so that way, as soon as I get into agentic AI, I am now scalable to an extent where you can have me as a human, and I can come to you for your business. And then the stupid stuff can all get automated, but I'm going to help creatives that are at my level that can't afford an ad agency, can't afford a big marketing company, and are going through frustrations that I myself have been dealing with for the last 10 years. And it's like, I can't afford this. I don't need what this ad agency sells. I don't need this, but I want this, and this. So I've been building this entire framework and I've realized that I can make more money than I'm making right now threefold. I can do something that I enjoy doing more that is less labor intensive. I can affect more people beneficially, continuing to do the thing that I love and make it sustainable, still creating a human experience, all while utilizing AI. And that is like today I posted about how the indie space, and not like AAA large companies or major movie companies or major video game companies, but if you are a small time creator, you have a small time business and you really want to excel, now is your time where the things that were hard can be easy.
Yeah, there and your uh, business model for the barbershop really allows. I mean, as you scale up in this other area, you can scale down your hours at the shop, but you don't have. It's not like, oh well, I'm going to have to sell the shop or something like that.
No,
You,
no. And funny enough, I was talking to one of my clients yesterday, and I was explaining to him, I'm like, look, I'm not pitching this to you, but you get it because you're literally the exact person that I would be pitching this to. He's just a dad. He has a toddler at home. He doesn't have time to build a website for himself, and he has he's a piano instructor, so he does private lessons, and he has no way of being able to demonstrate to people that he is a composer as well. He has no way of being able to explain what all of his group classes look like and how they differentiate from normal group classes. And he's like, I just don't have the time to learn all that stuff. And I was like, I do, 100%. I'm not trying to sell you, but I could sell you. So the only reason I bring him up is because I'm probably just going to do trade with him, and we might be getting a podcast jingle soon.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
There's that'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm really bummed. My buddy that I had on TikTok is no longer on TikTok because of all of the fiasco of, does China own it? Does China not own it? So he hasn't been posting, so we haven't been able to do our Wednesday morning stuff.
Yeah, and I mean TikTok is TikTok. TikTok's one of those things that it's just going to uh I don't think there's it's going to succeed in the United States. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
do something. And the whole, well, this is the deadline for you to figure it out. Uh well, if the Justice Department isn't going to enforce anything, if the Commerce Department isn't going to, yeah, so there's no reason for anyone to believe that the current administration, any of the departments, are gonna press that issue, um, knowing that somehow they're gonna get they're gonna get some agreement with the Chinese parent company.
Well, and I'm curious how much of the conversation is happening right now with like the delegates that are meeting in, it's in Geneva right now, isn't it? Between the China and US delegates.
I don't know where they're at. I know they're talking, and
Yeah.
there's but it seems to me, it just seems that I mean it where the stick isn't in the negotiating teams. The stick is with Donald J. Trump and Xi Jinping. I mean, those are the guys that are, and uh, they both realize that a trade war is going to be painful, but they've been um, expecting war with one another for a very, very long time. And why not? War, sometimes war uses military power, sometimes it uses economic power, sometimes it uses diplomatic power. There's all kinds of different power that you can use in warfare. So, now we're clearly fighting a war in the cyber domain, we're clearly fighting a war in the space domain, and we're clearly fighting a war in the trade domain.
So do you think the veterans of the trade war are going to be excited about the Veterans Day changes?
Good night. There's, I'll be honest. I mean, how there's, I really wish that, Donald Trump would just leave well enough alone with veterans. Because
Yeah.
every time he starts, trying to pretend that, that he's like one of the guys, it's the only thing that he and Biden have in common. It's that
Dodging the draft?
okay, yeah. So it's two things they have in common. They both they both used their families' political power to avoid getting drafted during the Vietnam War. And but the other thing is they, for whatever reason, they both think that like Joe GI likes them inherently for who they are. And to a certain extent, Trump is a little bit more
I think
uh,
army guys really like Trump.
but the reason they do is is because he's on their political team.
Right.
And and you know they're just for someone who's on their political team. But I mean if you just yeah, there's I mean I would be happy if you know President Trump had stopped the wars that he said he was going to stop, and if we weren't starting new wars, you know.
In JD Vance's defense, we're not going to get involved in the war that's not our war with India and Pakistan, and I'm very very grateful that it seems like they're coming to a ceasefire right now cuz man, that got out of hand quick.
Yeah, JD Vance has really endeared himself to me with there's because with the initial, you know, the whole Signal Gate thing, what got lost in that was JD
Him
Vance
speaking
saying
out
this
against
is
the
Europe's
president.
war.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like why are we going to war when I mean we get like 5% of our trade through the Suez Canal, and like everything that's coming to Europe from Asia goes through the Suez Canal. It's there's why on earth it's not French destroyers and you know British missile cruisers.
Countries protecting their own assets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same. I mean, it's literally the same thing as Ukraine and Russia. It's like oh, there's they just it's so frustrating for me. There's we try uh to just stay at war all the time, you know? And there's, it's just, yeah, and, you know, I'm glad, you know, we're talking about these veteran state changes because it's one of those things that it's like, okay, what, what Donald Trump sees is he sees the Victory Day celebrations in Russia. And he's like, well, why don't
Yeah.
we do that?
Yep.
You know, why don't we have a big parade and, uh, and
On my
I,
birthday.
yeah, I have absolutely no problem with having a big parade. I think that that'd be a great thing. I think that we could, you know, we could present military service as a positive thing on a national stage. I think that'd be a really, really great thing. But, but the notion that we ought to like, start dividing up the veterans community the way that the rest of the community is. So it's like we're divided by race, we're divided by gender, we're
Yep.
divided by political ideology, we're divided by everything. We're divided now, and now we want to be like, oh, okay, well the the veterans who are either dead or nearly dead are really good veterans. But all the veterans who are still
Yeah.
alive,
All the ones from Vietnam, you know what? Fuck them a second time.
yeah, and it's there's and you know it's so funny because there's like your grandpa Dick, he was a veteran of the Korean War
Yeah.
era, and there's and it's one of those things that so it's like you know he volunteered for military service right after World War II during the the crisis phase of the Cold War, and you know he ended up flying birds up and down the west coast of the U.S. during the Korean War, but that's just because that's where they told him to fly.
Yeah.
You know, there's it's not like he wouldn't have crossed the Pacific and if and so and that's what I think is very you know so like there you know sometimes within the veterans community we try and divide ourselves. So it's like are you a combat veteran or are you a just a veteran? Like
Are you just a
just
service veteran? Yeah.
Yeah,
Were
just a
you in the
service.
shit or were you not in the shit?
Yeah, and it's one of those things. It's like there's nobody gets a choice in once you sign up. Nobody gets a choice where you go
Yeah.
and what you're doing while you're there. You just
You're all
you
numbers and cogs. That's it.
yeah, and so I don't think we ought to be dividing the veterans community up. And I certainly and this is just a little thing that's in my craw. So it's a crip in my craw, to get the my southern vernacular in. The but like we call the veterans of World War II the greatest generation, and and it's a great title, and I don't diminish what American soldiers did and during World War II. Really, there it really was a tremendous effort, and and
But so
it,
were the efforts in Afghanistan. So were the efforts in Grenada. So were the efforts in Vietnam. So were the efforts in Iraq. So were the efforts in Korea. So were so many efforts from so many servicemen that you don't need to have. Okay, well, here's the one for all the dead people in World War One, and here's the one for all the dead people and the 80 remaining people from World War Two, and then all you living fucks get nothing.
yeah. So and it's like there's I mean, when I look at what I call them the GWAT generation, and it's mostly young Generation X and older millennials, um, and
The GWAT generation?
global war on terror.
Okay.
There's and but these guys, I mean, they like, and I say guys, I'm using guys in like as in man and humanity. So it's
Yeah.
both men and
These
women.
folks.
Yeah, there's they they knew. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like there's if you joined during the GWAT, particularly during the 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 crux of it, you were going to deploy. There, I mean, it was you were going to deploy, and sure, maybe I mean, if you've got this job or that job, then maybe you'll end up hanging out on a fob or whatever. Uh, but uh, but now all those folks from the fob are, I mean, it's Agent Orange all over again, from all the burn pits. But these people, it wasn't like both. Um, so of the 46 people who've been president, um, 31 were veterans. Were veterans who had some kind of military service. Um, and and then you look at it, it's like, oh, okay, well, with uh, Trump wasn't, he was a draft dodger. Biden wasn't, he was a draft dodger. Clinton wasn't, he was a draft dodger.
Obama
Obama
wasn't.
wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's like most of
Was
the,
was Bush senior?
oh my goodness, yes. Oh
Okay,
yeah.
and I'm not sure of what his military background was.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
my generation has not seen a leader that has leadership capabilities.
there are at least military leadership
Yeah.
capabilities.
Well,
And
the leadership capabilities that I would find a requirement of being the commander in chief of that entire branch of the government.
yeah, so and that's why I mean, I would love to see uh, JD Vance as president. I would love to see Tulsi Gabbard as president. I can't think of anybody in the I mean, there are veterans in the Democratic Party.
I
There's
still think Buttigieg could actually do a good job.
yeah,
Yeah.
he very well could.
I think if he could find himself more moderate, which he's been moving ever since the Biden administration, I do think that he could be a good contender for the Democrats. Maybe not in 28, but possibly in 32.
you
But
know
oh, go
you
ahead.
know what there's what this is just funny. This is every time I look at him, I think of David Hogg. the David Hogg, the guy now he's the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, but he was like a student at a school where there was a school shooting, and he's been a big anti war
Yeah, yeah,
guy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, now he's the deputy. He's the vice chair of the DNC. He was on uh, uh, Bill Maher with Donna Brazil.
Was
Um,
this last week or so?
yeah,
Okay, I didn't catch last week's episode yet. So, okay, that's fascinating. Yeah, I did not realize he's 25 years old.
I know, and that's what I see when I see Buttigieg, and
You know
it's
what
because
though?
they do kind of look alike.
They do.
Um,
The interesting thing is I I have a really hard time with JD Vance with his age. I because he is my age, and I don't think that people my age have the wherewithal yet. So the fact that he's vice president, not president, okay, I'm on board with that. 25, the head of the DNC. Oh my, like he could go, but he's got it. What, another 10 years before he could even qualify?
I think it's 33.
33. But I mean
Maybe it's
that's a significant career that you could have in politics, and I think that that's one of the things that Trump did correct was just have a young vice president, because you need to make sure that you have somebody who's going to see through the changes of that administration. It's like what you were talking about with the Pope last week.
yeah. There's I'm just typing in how old were the U.S. founders because I
Well,
disagree
they were
with you
young.
on the generational thing. I think I am so ready for for Gen X and millennials to be the political leaders in our country. I think
I
that that's a
agree. Gen X and millennials, not Gen Z.
yeah. So Monroe was when they signed the Declaration of Independence. James Monroe was 18. Aaron Burr was 20. Alexander Hamilton was 21. James Madison was 25. Thomas Jefferson was 33. John Adams was 40. George Washington was 44. Sam Adams was 53. And Benjamin Franklin was dragging his old ass in at 70.
See, I feel like they weren't trying to start a country, they were just trying to start a fraternity.
Yeah,
Kind of worked.
there's but I'm like and this isn't just in political leadership, but I think particularly in political leadership, it's it's like people give boomers a hard time, and they're like, oh well, boomers caused all the problems that are in the world today, la la la, whatever. But if you look at what boomers were fighting for when they were the age of Gen Z. I mean, they were fighting against the Vietnam War. They were, Kent State shooting. We just passed the anniversary of the Kent State shooting. They were starting protests on colleges all across the country. The National Guard was getting called out. That's how Kent State happened. Was the Ohio National Guard was called to put down the riots that were taking place at Kent State. So it's like we always look at the Kent State shootings and we see the people who are shot and they're crying and and we're like, oh man, it's horrible that we did that. But like we're doing the exact same thing today. It's just it's just sheer luck that that people don't get shot. Or even when they do get shot, we're like, oh well, I mean it's just one of a lot of guys, a lot of folks getting shot. So
It's it's been some funny places around just universities and big cities and anywhere that there's a congregation of ice.
yeah. But I want to finish my GWAT thing
Okay.
on the whole veterans because the I mean, if I were to try and place that label on generations now, it wouldn't go to a particular generation. It would go to the GWAT generation. It would go to the
Which
folks
label?
from the younger or the older, sorry, the younger Xers and the older millennials who not only stepped up for military service, but they stepped up. I mean, the number of police officers that we have, the number of other first responders that we have. It used to be the military industrial complex, but now it's the military and homeland security industrial complex because it's the exact same thing. We're just getting all kinds of weapons um for people who do that kind of work, and like people give them a hard time, but the whole TSA, I mean that's 50,000 folks that that started a brand new federal agency. People can be like, oh well, it's horrible, but uh, there's nobody wants to fly on a plane that's going to go down. It's like the shoe bomber. Everybody laughs at the shoe
Mm-hmm.
bomber, but he got caught. And there were a couple guys it's so funny, the underwear bomber and the shoe bomber both live here in Colorado at the AdMax in Florence.
See, and what I think is funny is that, I'm less concerned about the shoe bomber and the underwear bomber as I am with the understaffing at the air traffic control towers and the gutting of the FAA. Like, there's a way better reason that I don't want to fly right now.
There's, I mean, here's the thing on that. I can't tell you how long, because again, I worked at airports,
Yeah, you've
right?
been
So,
in the traffic control towers. You know what that workload is.
and they've been saying they're going to modernize that stuff like since I was first hired. There's uh we stood up a conference call on September 11th and they never hung up. So when you would go into the TSOC, it was called the Transportation Security Operations Center. You'd go inside this operations center and you would hear, every once in a while you'd hear talk going across this network, which was a conference call that they never hung up. But that was the technology they were using. They were like, that's the only way that every single air traffic control tower
Can
could
be on the same page at the same time.
and right away talk to the Homeland Security people and was everybody was on this conference call. But it's like one of those things where it's like the electrician goes down and he looks at this nest of wires and he's like, well, the first thing is everything working? Yes. Is nothing catching on fire? Yes. Okay, I can take my time with this. But
It's like
that's
there's this really stupid movie called MacGruber. And he's talking about how he can defuse a bomb, and he goes at the end of the movie, there's this bomb, and he just opens up the panel and just all these wires come out, and he's like, what on earth is this? I'm like a 2 or 3 wires kind of guy.
exactly. There's and so so it's just one of those things that there's there's been there's been better technology, and this is, I mean, I don't like Doge. There's not much that I can say good about Doge.
But this is the point of what they're supposed to be doing, is they're supposed to be providing that modernization. And it's like my room right now. My room is a mess because I'm about to clean it. I pull everything out so that way I can see what needs to get organized and then I put it where it needs to go. So I think that we're in the middle of a giant mess that I hope somebody cleans up properly.
Yeah, I started taking stuff apart yesterday because there's today and tomorrow are the only break that I have from school till October.
Yeah, which I still need to check for those flights. I don't think that I think that's another week before I can actually see if those flights are open or not.
Yeah, there's so I'm just like, man, there's and I know that in the middle of the summer I've got the overlap where I'm finishing up my B term classes and I've already started my D term classes. So for a while I've got a double class load in the middle of the summer. So most people take a vacation in the summer, and for me, school in the summer is twice as hectic as it is the rest of the year.
Well, it's a good thing that you're a full-time student.
It is a good thing that I'm a full time, and it's these first world problems. There's because to go back to the veterans, it's like there's so the VA is paying for my school. You know, there's and I think I'm glad.
I am
I'm
too. I think that you've served the country and you've deserved to be able to get what it is that you have earned. And the fact that the VA is able to get you back into society and make you a functioning part of society, whatever that is, it's a good thing because ultimately where you're at now is way better than when you were homeless 10 years ago.
that is that is true.
Right. Which that was one of the things that I earlier we were talking about that couple that you were talking about that lives there in Boulder.
Yeah,
And
and there's a it's um so there's this couple, and I mean, because I live downtown, I know a lot of the homeless people that live in downtown Boulder. And there's like we're getting into what you could probably call homeless season, because a lot of people move to Boulder that are homeless in the summertime. So the
well,
homeless
in
population in the summer like really uh, uh, blows up. We just have a lot of people, but but the I mean there's a lot of people who are homeless in February here,
yeah,
and man, I'm telling you, it's bitter, brutal, cold, and I think it was 4 years ago. Um, we had a just a tragic story. A young gal um, had a baby, was living homeless in the middle of the winter, and so she had her baby with her inside a tent, and she was trying to get along. She was trying to get by. And just like many women, I mean, there's postpartum depression. There's just, I mean, if you just think about the the psychology of homelessness, and how um uh worthless you can feel as a human being,
hmm
when there's you're like, man, everybody in this town seems to have a place except for me. There's no place for me. And that's kind of so then they're like, oh well, they're all on drugs. Well, duh. I mean,
Do you want
their
to live in
life
that reality?
sucks.
Yeah, that reality sucks so much. Would you rather live in the reality of knowing that everyone hates you and you're in misery all the time, or do you want to be in a reality where you have a little bit of euphoria?
Yeah, there's and so I there's but so this young gal um strangled her baby to death. And so and then now she's charged
Was
with
she
murder.
using drugs?
I don't know. I don't remember
Okay.
that detail. She very well may have been. Um but but the despair of being a mom. It's freezing cold outside. There's snow, the wind's blowing. You're living in a tent, there's
You're thinking about tomorrow and the next week and
yeah,
whether or not
how on
it's
earth
going
is
to
she going to
exist.
get a job?
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. What there's she doesn't have a place to do laundry. She's begging. She's going to the resource centers, and people are giving her diapers and stuff like that. but it's just this hopeless uh, existence, and and in her mind, and we've talked about suicidal ideation. Sometimes for people who are going through suicidal ideation, it's not it's because in many ways they justify. They're like, I get it. There's things would be better if I wasn't around, and that's not true. I'm not saying that that's true in any way, shape, or form, but I completely understand how people
I can
get
empathize with it.
that's
Yeah.
exactly right. I
Yeah.
understand how people get to that point, and I could understand. Um, uh, yeah, so it's just a horrible story. So this couple, I mean, they're homeless. They're in my neighborhood all the time, summer, winter, always, and and they don't, even on the, well, sometimes like on the very, very coldest nights, they'll go to the shelter. But most of the time they won't go to the shelter because the shelter separates them.
Yep.
Because they don't have a shelter that
They don't have a
except
women's shelter, and they don't want women in the population with men. So the men and the women in those shelters have to be separated for the safety of the women.
yeah, there's just, and so they're so committed to each other, and again, so like they're always together. They are always together. The guy, he has an external frame rucksack that is packed tight as, I mean, yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of, soldiers who had looser, backpacks than this guy. He's always, very, very neat, very, very meticulous in his mannerisms. Um, and she pushes a wheelchair, and all her stuff is in bags that are, in the wheelchair and on the wheelchair and hanging off the side of the wheelchair, so on and so forth. But they sleep here in the neighborhood quite often, right down the street from me, and then they get up in the morning and they pack all their stuff up and they walk, because that way they won't get hassled by the cops, because they're not camping anywhere. I mean, if they're sleeping someplace, they're only going to be sleeping there until the next
Right.
morning, and then they're going to pack up, so they walk all over the place. And I mean, how when you get to know somebody, I could be 5 blocks away and I see them, down the street, and I know exactly who they.
Yeah, you know their gait, you know their body posture, you
Yep.
know the way they hold themselves. It's just like, oh, that's them.
Yeah. And it's uh during Hoover's presidency, they had what they called Hoovervilles. So, and you can see in New York City, what is now Central Park was a Hooverville during the Great Depression. So, and it was, right outside of the town. All the homeless people would go into these Hoovervilles, and it was a place for them to congregate, to watch out for one another, and it was a place where, um, the mostly the churches from the community could go one place and they can feed them, one place and they can give them warm socks and shoes and whatever. And we just don't have the capacity to create Hoovervilles anymore. We're
Well, Dr.
there's
Seuss does. It's Whoville.
Whoville, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We just need
But
we need to elect Horton, because that's a Cheeto dusted furry man that I can get behind.
yeah. But it's like, man, there's just no place for these people, and it's so frustrating, because we're such a wealthy and we're such a powerful nation, and but we get and here's the problem is, like, if there is a nonprofit who is uh taking care of homeless people, solving the homeless problem isn't in their economic interest.
Nope.
It works against their economic interest. So it's best to just keep people, you know, on the dole, and getting the very very minimum that they need, uh, because that's that's how folks get paid. But
That's
it's
how
like
the earth runs.
there's a gal this week here in Boulder. Um, she's from Arizona, I believe. Uh, but there was like a teacher that was on uh, a field trip with a bunch of students, and this person, uh, pulled out a knife and is like following this group of students around, threatening to kill them. And so they arrest her, take her to the jail, and the judge gives her a personal recognizance uh, bond. So she's like literally hours after threatening to kill children with a knife, she's out on the street again. And so then the DA gets creative and puts a bunch more charges on her. Uh, Not that she had done anything different, but rather than only charging her with a single count of felony menacing, she got a felony menacing account for
Every
every
child.
single person that was in the
Yeah.
group. So she was charged with one, and then now she was charged with 38, and she had failed to appear for a bond or whatever. So it's like, um, we need to be able to put people into our jails who are like that, who are dangerous, who are, but this couple, they're not a danger to anybody. I mean, they're the most polite people.
And it's
They're
the definition of a committed couple.
it really
Yeah.
is.
Like
I
that
mean,
is the definition of love.
it is. They suffer together, and like she has mobility issues, so she's always like moving very 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 slow, very very slow. But and that's one of the if you've ever if your therapist has ever given you one of the screenings to see whether or not you're depressed, but
He
one of the
never needed
questions,
to.
yeah, what one of the questions they always ask you is, they're like, do you find yourself moving slow, so slow that someone else would notice it? They ask you
Yeah, like
that.
there's a sense of lethargy that's like very, very present.
Yeah. So she's got, physical mobility issues, but clearly she's, man, I mean, just obviously got this chronic depression that how's it ever going to go away? So she moves very, very, very slow, and he's so patient. Gets to, he walks in front, gets to the curb, and then he just kind of like hangs out at the curb and waits for her to catch up. And like, when they go to cross the street, there's uh it takes her a little while to cross the street, so she can't, even if they press the little button and they get the walk light,
It
she's going to be
probably
like
ends
maybe a
time
third
before
of the way
she's done.
across the
Yeah.
street when the light changes. And so he stays out there, and there's always, it's amazing how, uh, people they're like, get out of the way, I got to get to work, and there's just like, uh, I think we talked about it a couple times. There's this anti-empathy movement in the country now, particularly among men, young men, and it's just horrible. It's really horrible. Anyway, there's I
Well,
could
and earlier you were talking about how it's kind of becoming homeless season, and that's something that we have that's pretty prevalent in Boise as well. Because once the weather starts getting nice, there's obviously amenities that are out and about, and people don't have to be in the shelters. They don't have to be kind of hiding out. There's a lot of people that, because of all the BLM land that's around, they'll go camp out into the forests because they can get away and actually set up a place. But then once it's in the spring, summertime, you start seeing like, okay, but this is that time of the year. And what's been really interesting is ever since your experience, it's honestly kind of helped shape my view, because I do see there are two categories of individuals, those that are non-problematic and those that are problematic, and there's definitely some problematic people that we have, and there's definitely a significant amount of problem that we do see, but there are so much more non-problematic people that are just trying to live their lives. And it's there's this one woman that is outside of Costco, and she is there every single time I'm at Costco. She has the exact same sign every single time. And it's very clear that she's got a couple medical conditions. She's got a handful of sores on her face. And, Haley's tried giving her food. Like, ever since we lived outside of Atlanta growing up, I remember mom always saying, like, we'd rather be able to give you food and make sure that we're actually feeding you and giving you something you need as opposed to giving you money. Haley's been the same way, and she tried getting her some food and just something to get her day, and she's like, "Oh no, I've got dental condition as well. Like, I can only eat certain things." And she's got a laundry list of medical conditions that are very legitimate medical conditions. And the amount of people that just give her no time of day, or the amount of people that I have seen pull out of that driveway right into the parking lot of the restaurant right next to it to get out of their car and tell this lady, "Why are you here all the time?" It's like, why does it impact you? Why does this person's existence have any negative impact to you when they're having just a rough time? But their presence, the aesthetic of them simply being in your purview, is problematic to you. When it's a human that's in your purview, like, I just don't understand that at all. There is a squirrel outside your window that is very angry. It is so angry. I've been hearing it for the last 5 minutes, and I thought it was a bird at the beginning, and it's just like,
There's it's starting to get warm, so I've got my window open. I can close it,
no, it's the squirrels. They're hanging out because they've got friends now.
there's it's I think this kind of ties into the whole uh the new Pope Leo the 14th, and one of the reasons why I think that it applies is because the last Pope Leo
The
the
13th?
13th, yeah, the 13th. He was about 100 years ago, during the Industrial Revolution, and at that time, um, you know, uh, man, I mean, there we were putting kids in factories, and I mean, it was just really, really a horrible time to be an impoverished human being. And
Great time to be a Rockefeller.
yeah, there's and Leo the 13th um, started in fact. Hang on, let me grab it. I'll be right back.
And for those of you who don't know, podcasts don't do very well with dead
So
air.
this book I've got. Hang on, let me plug my speakers back in. I've got all these technical issues, but it's called the Compendium of the Catholic Social Doctrine, the social
Okay.
doctrines of the Church. So the social doctrine, Catholic social teachings, was begun by Leo the 13th. So and and it's there's I think that there are so many um, uh, correlations between the time of Leo the 13th and the time that we're in now with Leo the 14th, where um, the the distance between wealth and poverty is uh, is tremendous. I mean, the number of people who are making over $400,000 a year um, compared to the people who are making under $50,000 a year.
And even the
Um,
people who are in between that are living paycheck to paycheck and could have one tariff be the thing that they don't have a job. Uh,
yeah, and there's uh, and when you look at like like Disney is building a new uh, theme park in Abu Dhabi.
hmm I read about that.
So, so, but here's the thing. You know how they're going to construct it with slave labor,
Yep.
literal slave labor.
Same way that Dubai was built, the same way that Qatar was largely formed. Like it's not as though this stuff is still gone. This was one of the things when Haley and I went to Dubai that we had to do a lot of like getting an understanding of where the space that we're going to is and realizing, okay, some of these insanely gorgeous, beautiful buildings were constructed by men who had farms and whole properties in impoverished nations in southern Asia. And it's like, hey, if you come over here, we're going to give you jobs. You just need to sell all your land and make sure that you have enough money to get over here. And then as soon as they get over there, their passports are taken from them. They're put into dormitories with like 10 to 15 other men. They're told you're going to work 80 hours a week on all of this stuff. This is the pay you're going to be getting. And oh, what's your alternative? Going back? Well, you don't have a farm anymore. So these people get put into these indentured situations, and then they have no way of being able to get out of it. This is why there was all of the protests when the World Cup was in Qatar a couple years ago, is because of what they were doing to build that stadium. And like, do I think that the House of Mouse is as altruistic as people want to think that it is? No, not at all. Do I think Walt Disney had some views that are pretty Elon-y? Yeah, I do. And to think that they are going to do anything other than have cheap labor so we can sell expensive entertainment to a people with a lot of money, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, and it's so uh, and that that's just what I think that Leo when he was Friar Prevost, because there's I mean that's what he did. He joined the Augustinian
Yeah, and he was with
order.
the Augustinians for like 12 years, wasn't he?
Yeah, so he was a missionary. He was like down in Peru. There's some great
hmm
pictures of him on a donkey, and he was working with um you know the poorest kids in the villages of rural Peru. Um and so and it's one of those things. It's like so he's an American, yeah, but he's an American who is like, you know what, I have been given so much, I've got to go to where people have nothing.
And I think that the perception that has been given to him from a lot of people has been that he is a Pope of the Americas as opposed to a Pope of North America or the Pope of the United States. Like the fact that he was originally from Chicago is cool, but it's not really who he is in his entirety.
There's it's kind of funny though, because now that since he is an American Pope, there's just all kind. His brothers have been like overwhelmed the past couple days with news corporations interviewing him. So like he plays Wordle every day with his brother. Um, and so and there's
That's awesome.
yeah. So throughout all these years, all that he's done, he's maintained a relationship with his brothers that is a very very um, American sibling style relationship. There's so like his brother from who still lives in Chicago. So he's the youngest of three, and the middle brother was getting interviewed, and he's like, "Hey, I heard my iPad downstairs go off a couple times. That might be my brother. That might be the Pope," is what he said. I got to go check this. So they go down into the basement, and it was. So he calls his brother back, from his iPad. So he gets on a FaceTime with the new Pope. And the first thing that Pope Leo says when he answers the phone, he's like, "Well, why didn't you answer the phone earlier?" And so I'm like, it's a completely, but you think about it, it's one of
Well, it'd
those
be
that,
like if mom called me and I didn't answer, and then mom calls again. It's like, why didn't you answer the first time? That's the initial instinct. It's not, oh, the Pope is calling. It's like, oh, yeah, my brother's calling. Busy. I'll do something.
and every Pope is that way, but because there's never been one from the United States, we've never seen a Pope in terms of, we've never seen that kind of humanity in in a pontiff to where we're like, oh man, there's all these people who people who went to school with him, and people who worked with him because he's got a math degree, and he worked as a graphic designer. You were talking uh, about AI and art. He worked as a graphic designer for a while. So uh, anyway, but I there when we were talking about homeless people, that's what made me think of Pope Leo, and it's one of those things that, so there's lots of, again, so he's the 14th Leo, and the 13th is just the one before him, but Leo the 10th was the guy, you know, when the Protestant Reformation came around, he was the guy that was like bankrupting the church and selling all these indulgences, and like literally selling bishops, to
So
politically
that
connected
actually
people.
brings up a pretty good topic of conversation, because when I was listening to one of my news podcasts the other morning, they were talking about like the financial crisis that the Catholic Church has been in, specifically like the Vatican. And one of the ways that the Catholic Church, well, the Vatican specifically, used to be able to fund what it was that they were doing was through those indulgences. And that was just a very easy way of like, okay, you're sinning, you can pay for your indulgences, that will fund everything. And it was Benedict that stopped the indulgences, wasn't it?
Well, actually, the practice of indulgences still still exists, but they're not sold.
Okay.
Um, uh, there's and I don't know enough about it
Okay.
to really talk intelligently about it. But there,
Wait,
but
so you're 20 days into being confirmed Catholic and you don't know enough?
there's a lot to know. Trust me.
There's like 2,000 years worth of stuff, apparently.
Yeah, there is. But but the big and that was, so one of the classes that I'm taking next term, the term that starts on Monday, is church history. Um, and that's literally, I was reading this morning about Martin Luther and what his problems were with the Catholic Church, and um, this whole the whole idea of indulgences is relative to the Catholic teaching of purgatory. So, some people, when they die, they go and they're immediately in, what we'll call heaven, but they're immediately with the rest of the saints, and with um
They made it.
yeah, they're with the immaterial beings, the angelic beings, they're with Jesus. There's and other people still have some work to do. and the ones that still have some work to do on their heart go to this place called purgatory, and purgatory is a place for the purging of sins. So the rest of your sinful nature gets purged while you're in purgatory. And there's so like we were just when Pope Francis died, there was a 9-day period of prayer for the repose of his soul. So, and that repose of his soul is like, oh, okay, well, there's a process that the church has to go through to determine whether or not somebody's a saint. So nobody knows whether or not, Pope Francis made it into heaven on the first day, right? I mean, he
Right.
might have, there's a part of the prayer is that if he ends up in purgatory for the purging of sin, that time that he spends within purgatory is short, and that then he moves to his eternal resting place in the
So
Catholic
so that brings up
figuration of heaven.
a question then, because if you're talking about the immaterial and you're talking about timeless beings, and the realm that we live on has time as we perceive it, how could time in purgatory be perceived as short if it could be perceived as anything at all?
Yeah, and there's one of the interesting things about Catholicism that there is that they're not afraid to say we don't know. It's mystery. Um, and
Surprise.
so there uh, there are what are called the mysteries of faith, and the mysteries are things like the suffering servant, the suffering Messiah that Jesus was, because uh, you know prior to Jesus coming, everybody thought that the Messiah was going to come and was going to be like this big political leader, and he was going to throw Rome out of Israel and conquer all the Gentile enemies, and he was going to be this great leader. And that's not what happened. I mean, it was just total. But when you look back, you can see how the Old Testament prophesied the things that actually happened. So those are mysteries that were revealed with the coming of Christ. But then, there's, I mean, one of the things that the church teaches, it's that Christ himself is not a mystery. Christ is mystery. It's not a mystery that can be solved. It's not like Scooby Doo. You're going to pull the mask off somebody and figure out the story. It's just it's and you're hitting the nail on the head with the mystery. At least in my realm, because I am naturally a very um, uh, so my normal bent would be towards scientific naturalism, um, that that you know that science reveals to us these amazing mysteries of the universe, right? So like, and one of the mysteries of the universe is space time. Like everything that we have is within those four dimensions, space time, right? And and uh, and that's the thing that, at least for me, that's the big thing that the eternal realm does not have, is
Yeah.
there's no space time. So so uh, so where is that, and what does that look like? And then when we talk about again, I'm going off on a tangent, but like we talk about like the Holy Spirit being everywhere, the Holy Spirit being within us, the Holy Spirit being among us. There's so how does that equate? And we want to find a material answer for it. We want to be able to say, oh, okay, well, here's where heaven is.
Yeah,
And
we
heaven
want to
is the,
rationalize and be able to say there's shaker in the middle of my bottle, and I can see it, and I know that it's there. That's the thing that mixes all my powders.
Yeah. There's so like I mean, when I look at the material world, I see a very complex world of structure and order. So, there's the the tiniest subatomic particles and the grandest galaxies in the universe are all subject to gravity. And the laws of physics work everywhere within the universe. So, my I just assume that the immaterial world is also complex and a world of order or a place of order. But how do I know what that order is? I mean, it's anyway.
There's a I was really I'm drawing a blank right now, and this is bothering me because there's been this thing that's been popping up the last couple of days. I listened to an episode of Rogan the other day that had a um, scientist that was talking about quantum physics and like the double slit experiment, and how we've recently been able to prove teleportation and how things can exist in two places at the same time. He's talking about this research that was done of, what was it, not Sears, readers, and interesting, like, okay, this is some weird pseudoscience that Joe Rogan would have on. That's fine. And then yesterday I get a news notification from I want to say it was either The Verge or Scientific American, whatever the news notifications on my phone is. And it's talking about the exact same thing, the quantum basis of consciousness and these microtubes that are inside your brain. And they're starting to understand that there's now actually a quantum understanding of what consciousness is. And it's the same kind of understanding where don't know what it is. We can say that what we've been calling it is what we have been calling it, and what we've been calling it is an all-encompassing thought. But now we're recognizing that that all-encompassing thought is not the all-encompassing thought, and there's starting to be a little bit more specifics. We don't know anything about those specifics, but we are starting to drive down and drill in a little bit deeper. And that's the stuff that I find fascinating, because with my thought process, I still very much think that it's there's a little bit in all of the religions of the one thing that's out there, and I'm pretty sure that this life is purgatory in my view. I think that if you are trying to purge out your sins, you need to have a time to do that, and we need to occupy a space in order for that time to pass. So maybe the reincarnation is our ability to, okay, do it again, do it better, do it again, do it better, do it again, do it better. And you're just going to continue that process. And life is purgatory because this is the time and space that it needs to exist. And, if I wake up and I'm in that immaterial space, fantastic. And if I wake up and I start again, well, I guess we'll find out the next go round. But for me, there's comfort in that because all right, both of those kind of have a little bit of ideals of what's going to be happening after the fact. But it still gives me room to have that mystery of maybe it is this, maybe it's not. I don't really know, and I don't necessarily think that I'm evolved enough to be in a position to care.
Yeah, there's. I think I might have mentioned it once before. There's a quote that, at least as the story was told to me, it was said by the road manager of AC/DC. And this guy was talking to him, and he said that God is the blanket we throw over the mystery,
Mm-hmm.
so it has a shape, and we can see it, and we can
It's
talk
the
about
shaker
it, and we
ball.
can, yeah, we can. So it's there's and there one of the I told you I'm I kind of see myself as a theological anthropologist, and one of the things that is interesting about that is if theology is the study of what's knowable about God, there's always going to be more unknowable about God than there is knowable. So I am, and again, that's, the pursuit of science is that you never get to the end. It's a never, it's an unending problem because there's more mystery. And it's the same about humans. So anthropology, humans are whoa complex and very, very mysterious. And, there's, to think that if anybody thinks that they've got human beings like totally figured out, um, I think they're mistaken because people will surprise. And so like in the same way that the material sciences are, uh, a pursuit of understanding, the social sciences are the same thing. We're still trying to figure out, you know, how people as individuals exist inside their mind, and then when you add a social element to it, how people exist in that social space, that the immaterial thoughts that we share with one another, and they create, they create bonds that are that are greater than just a physicality. So like when you love someone, it's not like you only love them when they're with you. You love them when they're not with you.
Right.
And it's not like you love someone only when you're happy with them or only when you're being sexually satisfied by them. You there's this tangible thing, this fundamental substance, but it's a substance that you can't grab. You can't, and people have been trying to explain it for millennia. Like punk rock is filled with love songs, and there it's just it's they're so and music. I mean, when rock and roll came out and everybody's like, "Oh man, this is this brand new kind of music." So it's a different beat and we're still saying she loves me, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, uh
Yeah, it's still a way of communicating the things that we feel intrinsically inside of ourselves.
yeah, and like things like beauty,
Yeah.
like the statue of David. It's this glorious piece of marble, and people, like save up their entire life to take uh, um, a trip to Rome so that they can see this statue. There's of a thing because it's so it's so beautiful, and they've just like wanted to be next to it. And so beauty is not just like something that looks good. There's a big difference between the beauty of a Farrah Fawcett poster that I had on my wall when I was in high school, um, uh, and uh, that this last week we saw all the Cardinals, you know, walk into the Sistine Chapel singing this song called the Litany of the Saints, and there's so there that just the I can only imagine what that felt like for those people. I was talking about Pope Leo having a brother and being a guy from Chicago or whatever.
I
Well,
just want to stop you for a second. Did you just compare like 112 Cardinals to Farrah Fawcett?
well, there, there's what I was saying was that Farrah Fawcett
Well,
was
you see what I said it was.
she's sexy, right? So that
So
was a very
Cardinals are sexy.
and to a certain extent, there's another, I don't know where it's stored, but there's a beautiful statue called the Veil, and it's a nude woman, um who has like this very sheer like cheesecloth.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and it's a beautiful sculpture. Beautiful sculpture.
The whole thing is a rock.
Yeah. Yeah, and
And this,
it's done so well that it looks delicate.
can you imagine, sitting there with a, first all you have is a big block of it and you're like chipping away. And then at the end, you're taking these tiny little files and you're every, and it's not just that you're making a human body, but you're making a human body that has,
You are silhouetting actual muscle structure
and
and
underneath, but it's
ligament.
underneath that veil. It's underneath
Yes.
that cloth. It's so, there's a big difference between that beauty of a woman's body and a poster of Farrah Fawcett.
Well, I think one of the best ways that I remember it being described, and you're talking about like attraction and beauty in one extent, but I think you could make the comparison with the term love. And when I was still going to church, and the first time the use of agape love was actually talked about, and it's like this isn't the love that you have for your wife. This isn't the love you have for your parents. It is a whole unconditional love. It is a different love that it's not a sexual love. It is not a pleasurable love. But you can feel that love during those experiences, but it is something separate and bigger than all of it.
Yeah, Saint Thomas explains it as that love is willing the good of another as other. So it's not an emotion; it's an act of will. And if your will is telling you to do something, it's a compulsion. It's something that you feel like you have to do. Um, and you have to do it if your will is for, it's like if you're like, oh man, I have the will to uh to go to school and get a doctorate degree. Well, there are going to be so many days that you don't want to read a book, that you don't want to do that assignment, that you don't want to do it, but you will yourself into into doing it. But that's doing something for yourself. If you take that same thing and it's like, oh, I want to will the good of another, and I don't just want to will their good like I think this is what they need. I want to will their good as if I was their will, as if
Well,
I was the one. And so anyway, that's I've always
it's the homeless man staying in the middle of the street for his partner because he knows that that's what she needs, even though it impacts him.
he's willing her good
Yes.
as as her what she would will for herself.
Um, I think while we're talking about
Oh yeah, we
tapping,
got to talk about the creative consultation. Easy to Chris. What's up with that?
well, I was going to talk about table topics.
Oh, well, we can do that. We'll do that. We'll do the other one afterwards. Let's do
I
tabletop.
I mean, I'll gladly talk about myself since we've been talking about Pope Leo. Let's just get a real Leo on here. I will talk about myself for days. I saw him give Pope Leo. I was like, I hope he's a peacock. That's gonna be so awesome. It's, that's one of the things Haley and I were talking about. So we went to the Renaissance Fair before, and it's being in Idaho, having tattoos as long as I've had, having the amount of tattoos I have, like I've been a sore thumb for a pretty long time. Like you pick me out in a crowd, and it's funny because Renaissance fairs are the one time that I actually feel like I fit in. I get completely dressed up and I look like every other nerd and dork who's dressed up like a Viking, and I just fit in, and I don't like I feel like I'm peacocking because I'm doing all this extra stuff, but so is everybody else. So actually I feel normal. But today was kind of funny because I'm in my full garb, like full regalia. I've got my coyote pelt, I've got my sword, I've got my axe, and there's this guy who comes up in costume, and he is distracting me because he's a rapscallion. And he's like, "Do you see this man over there that has the cross on his chest?" And he's pointing out this guy dressed up as a crusader. And we start talking about the crusader, and then he grabs my belt, and then he's like, "Well, now you don't have this," and then he runs off, and he has a little coin purse, and I'm like, "That guy just stole from me." So I book it after this guy, and I'm realizing as I'm running, okay, he didn't actually steal from me. This is the whole thing of Renaissance Fair, is you're in character, you go have fun with people. I am running full speed with a sword and an axe after this guy. meanwhile Meanwhile, I'm supposed to be meeting up with my buddy and his girlfriend. We haven't seen them the entire time. And I am running full sprint like, "This man is a thief. He's stolen from me." And my buddy is with his girlfriend who has never met me, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's my barber."
There's
So,
the
for those of you who are new, either here or here, we do a thing every week, which is the Table Topics game. It's just a conversation starter. It's a really good way if you want to start conversations with your family. They have a bunch of different topics, and this box that we've been doing is the family dinner conversations. So we pick a card every week, and it's just the fun little conversation starter in the middle of our conversation. Oh, this will be a good one. What did you disagree with when you were younger that makes sense now? I hate this one because I'm becoming more conservative in my middle age.
yeah, man. There's for me, boy, I don't. You go first.
Okay. I'll tell you what. There's a very specific scenario that's going on right now in Idaho, and this is a weird one because this is something that I think you had actually talked to me about when we used to do like cigars and whiskey out on the back porch. And the Idaho governor recently passed a law that says that there are only like five flags that can be flown in any of the state buildings or city buildings or government buildings. And last week, the mayor of Boise said that we're going to have the Pride and Equity flag be a city flag alongside of the organ donor flag. So I, as a big advocate of the community that she is wanting to support, hate this decision. I cannot support it whatsoever. I can't. And it's been a feud with a couple of people with me because it outwardly seems like I'm not supporting that group of people. And then last night I see that Bonners Ferry, Idaho is doing the exact same thing with a Canadian flag. Because they are 30 miles south of the border. There's a lot of Canadians that support that town, and they want to show solidarity for a community while there's a lot of conflict going on in the country. And that's a lot of what the Boise mayor is wanting to do. And when I was younger, would have absolutely felt like, yeah, that makes sense. That really does make sense. But when I was talking with Haley about it last night, I was really bringing up like, this is not the time to do that. It's just not, because one, it's a wedge issue, and it's just going to create a wedge, and two, that's not my flag. Like that's not my flag, and as much as I support that flag, that's not my flag, and I have a flag. It's the Commonwealth flag. It's the Boise flag, and I don't want that flag to be used as a prop. And she's like, "Well, it's not being used as a prop. It's showing that there is acceptance of a group of people. I was like, yeah, but we can't have that be the message that goes out there, because if we can say that that flag can be available, then those assholes that are trying to make the Greater Idaho Initiative and have their stupid evergreen flag that has an appeal to heaven, how long before they're in power and they get to have their flag? Like, that is an issue to me, because I don't want those fuckers flying their flag at my state capitol. And in the same way, at the end of the day, if somebody's coming after me and my neighbor's losing. I'm winning. I'm going to win. If somebody's coming between the two of us, I care more about me than my neighbor. So I want to have something that is reflective of me. And for the city, the Commonwealth flag is that. For Idaho, the Idaho flag is that. And I go to Oregon pretty regularly. And I love some of the things that you can do in Oregon. I'm not going to fly an Oregon flag. And I wouldn't expect Oregon to fly an Idaho flag because I go to Oregon. And in the same way, like, if I see Bonner's Ferry making this statement of like, yeah, we're showing solidarity. Okay, but you're also going completely against what your government has said. And do I agree as an individual citizen, break the law? Yeah, do it. As an individual citizen, do the things that you need to do to be correct for your lifestyle, knowing the consequences that could potentially happen. But if you are a government agency and you are breaking the rules of what your parent government agency has said, then simply my government is broken. And that's all that I care about. So to answer the question of what did I disagree with when I was young that I am starting to make more sense now as an adult, that.
The so funny in my apartment I display two flags. I've got an American flag that I display in my living room, and next to it I've got a flag from that's just um, a memorial flag from Urgent Fury. So it's got a picture of the island. It's got the places in the island where there were major battles, and then it's got in a ring a circle kind of going around um, the island the names of the rangers who died in that mission. So like the five guys from my battalion, they all died on the first day. Three guys from the Second Ranger Battalion, they all died on the third day. And so I remember those. So that flag is not nearly as much like, oh, I want to identify myself.
But that is your community.
But that's not how I use it.
Okay.
I do it so that when I go by that flag, I remember those guys. and and it's one of the things that this is a huge thing within the veterans community. I mean, the way that you keep people alive is you tell their story.
Yep. Well, I
um
mean, that's the same thing with Dia de los Muertos and the Equinox. Is It's like the way that you keep the souls living is you don't forget what their lives were.
yeah, and it's so for me it's very much. And it's one of those things. It's like when and this isn't just in war, but it ends up being the experience of war, because the people who die in battle are so often young. I mean, they're just so that I'm not saying that older people don't die as well, but boy, yeah, I mean, most of the people who die are
People
19
who
years
lack
old.
experience to know how to not die.
There's or just a bad circumstance, and
Yeah.
there's and in the unit, this is one of the things that I loved about being an infantry first sergeant, is because I would go to work every morning and I'd stand in front of a formation, and like almost everybody in the formation was between the ages of 19 and 21. um, because that's the vast majority of the people in the infantry are between 19 and 21. If you're old over 21, you're probably a sergeant. If you're over 25, you're probably a staff sergeant. So, there's and there are a whole lot more privates and private first classes and specialists than there are sergeants and staff sergeants and sergeants first class. But I used to love it because it's like they would make me the best me that I could be, because I had to be, you know, I had to make myself physically inspiring to to people who were much younger and stronger than me. So it kept me trying to be better, trying to there's to always know about every weapon system, and to be able to do everything that everybody in the unit was able to do. And if there was a new weapon that came into the arms room, I wanted to be the first guy to go to the range and fire it, because I wanted to be there's and it was we were talking earlier about young people in politics, younger people now in politics. There's I there's in the same way that I hoped to inspire them, they all were inspiring me every morning to try and be better than than I could. So and all this, I still haven't answered the question. What there's um and it's so funny because I have um I've been pretty traditional my whole life, and
I
and
think that your life has kind of come full circle because it started one way and then it was the season of your homelessness and then it's kind of come back to where it was.
yeah, very much so. Yeah, that is true. That's very much true. Uh but like like we were talking about homeless people and being addicted and so on and so forth. Well, I mean, that was your grandma for so many years. But I was ne- I was never like really critical of her. Uh, you know, I was always trying to protect her because I thought that was kind of like my role. Um, and and even in terms of politics, uh, I've never been Republican or Democrat, but I've always had a pretty traditional view. I told you that when I decided to join the army uh, was when the Iranians
Mm-hmm.
attacked our embassy during the Iranian Islamic Revolution in 1979, and I was so angry and so embarrassed that they were doing that to our country on the world stage. I was like, I just could not wait until I was old enough to join the army so I could be part of the solution to that. So I'm trying to think of, it's like there were times when I wasn't happy with like, my dad's style of discipline. But but if anything, today I've got more empathy for him than I ever did when I was young. So it's not like uh, yeah, well, maybe that's the issue. Maybe it's just a better understanding, because like I thought my dad was out to get me, man. I thought he just hated me, and everything that he did, towards me, I thought was he was doing it intentionally just to try and stick it to me or whatever. And I
Mm-hmm.
resented him. I mean, I really resented him. Um, and but now I'm like, I realized that he was in a very difficult circumstance. I mean, there's um your grandma and he divorced when I was in, I think, the fourth grade, third or fourth grade. And So everything up to that point was like, Brady Bunch time for me.
Yeah.
And but then when they split, um, uh, I went with my mom, and I very much was on my mom's team. Um, and 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 I was and that necessarily made me not on my dad's team.
Yeah.
And he had to try and work through that resentment, work through that anger, work through all that stuff. So I now see what he was doing was just playing the he was doing the best that he could. And like his dad wasn't around when he was growing up. So there's, uh his I think my uncle Sam was his dad's brother. I think. I don't know. But he was raised by a guy in town that was not his dad. His and like my dad's uh my dad's father and my dad's mother were never I mean I never met his mom. Um uh I think she lived in New York, uh not in New York City, but I think she lived in New York State, but I don't know. So he grew up not really knowing, there's not really knowing what it was like to have a dad. So very much like I was, he applied for and was accepted to go to West Point, and so and he, to his dying day, his time in West Point was so important to him, and he was so proud of it and so connected with that community, um, that at the same way that I am with Charlie Company First Ranger Battalion.
Yeah.
That was really my first functional family, was when I showed up to my unit.
I was talking with one of my clients yesterday morning about being able to use AI with still living grandparents to be able to have an opportunity for them to tell their stories. And I've thought about Dick a couple of times, and that man would have been fascinated with the world that we're in today. I think he would have been opinionated as shit, but I think he would have been fascinated by this world.
Yeah, I remember and this is a thing that we never agreed on. Because I wanted him to join Facebook so much
And he just
because,
wanted to do like the weekly email.
yeah, and he would like yeah, but he grew up when there were letters,
Yeah.
and like you would hand write a letter to people, and and uh and he viewed the uh the digitization of society as something horrible. So I tend to think that he would look at AI probably in the same way. It's like, I know a lot of guys who are like, they're it's not that they just don't understand AI. They hate AI. They
Oh
think that AI is
man.
the enemy.
Yeah, so the guy that I hired for my local art, I was telling him about, hey, here's how we'll segue. I was telling him about my creative consultancy that I'm doing. And this is the guy that I've spent a significant amount of money to have artwork done for me. And he's like, "Oh, cool. So you have an unpaid intern now?" I was like, "No, I pay him $20 a month." Like, yeah, I'm sorry that you don't like that, but guess what? That's what it is now. And you know what? He's gonna be paid soon, $200 a month, because he'll be that much better of an unpaid intern. And there are so many people that are like violently opposed to it. I actually earlier today was working on one of my intake forms, and I've been looking in the last week of what are the current laws and ethics of disclosing AI in a creative consultancy? Like, do I need to actually disclose that I utilize AI services? And I don't. Um, And now I'm in this place of, okay, let's try and ask different questions then, because I'm allowed to. Should I? And one of the things that a lot of creatives talk about is, do you publicly put your pricing information out there? Because if you publicly put your pricing information out there, you are pushing people away from having an actual interaction with you, and you will simply not be able to have the conversation with somebody if you don't allow them to actually ask you, how much do you charge? Because when they ask you how much do you charge, you get to be able to say, well, I charge this much, but this is the value that I provide. So it becomes a sales opportunity. And if you put your price out on the internet, you could potentially eliminate all of your sales opportunities because you're just pushing people away with giving them the information that they're actually asking for. So there is that mentality. And because there is this sentiment of AI, okay, do I want to let people know that I use AI, or do I want to have a conversation with them? And I'm realizing that I'm going to be upfront about it. I'm going to be really upfront about it, and then I'm just going to cater it towards, all right, what's your comfort level? Do you want the full human approach? Okay, there's no discounts. You're getting the full human approach. Do you want the cheap, affordable rates that AI can provide so that way I can do the things that you need? Cool, let's do that. Do you want me to just use it for automation's sake, for the sake of automation's sake, so that way our human interactions can be better? Or do you want me to generate some AI artwork for you so that way you can have some really, really cheap marketing and merchandising opportunities? Um, I have, so to pitch it, I have gone by the handle Easy to Chris for what, probably like 20 years now.
Yeah, it was one of the first email addresses you got.
Yeah.
I think you had one other one with MySpace.
Uh, so Easy to Chris happened right when we moved to Boise. And it was because you had bought me that acoustic bass, and I started like writing really shitty songs, and I made my really crappy first CD, and I had called that music project Easy to Kill. And I was easy to Chris. The band was easy to kill. It was this whole like, yeah, that's the thing. I'm Chris. I'm easy to kill, and I'm a fleshy meat
And
sack.
today you're not easy to kill.
No, I am not. Not today. Definitely not. Slightly more difficult. We'll say that.
Slightly
Uh,
more difficult to kill than I used to be.
I don't have three sharp things in front of me, followed by many sharp things beside me at any given moment.
You were chasing a guy around at a fair with a sword this morning.
Screaming, thief, you rapscallion! So my cardio is much better than it used to be. Uh, so I have always had it, and I've never really thought much of it, and I've always made jokes to people when they ask what my Instagram is. I'm like, oh, it's easy to remember because it's easy to Chris, and then they get a giggle out of it, and that's always been this thing that I've been doing. They're like, oh, can you do that? Oh yeah, it's easy. I mean, I'm Chris. It's easy to Chris, right? And with all of this work that I've been doing with AI, it finally clicked. Like it just clicked. Why are you making life so hard? It doesn't need to be hard. We can make it easy because it's easy to Chris. That's my tagline. That is my marketing thing. I am going to make it easy for you. I have been a person who has been on the front line of being an independent business owner who had to go to school, learn myself, learn point of sale systems, go through and do work at different companies before I could start my own business, and then I had to learn what didn't work before I learned what did work, and nobody was helping me along the process. The
Yeah,
only
and like when the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
you guys were like, man, you were like, because your state wasn't helping you out.
No, no. And here's the crazy thing. So I have a history of management, and when I was in my last company, I was part of an emergency response team, and I was one of a few people that was trained on a defibrillator, on contacting the FBI, on contacting local law enforcement, on dealing with bomb threats because we got a lot of bomb threats. And I was one of six people in this emergency preparedness for the leadership team. So in the state of Idaho, state was doing dick for us. Like they didn't give us any kind of guidelines. They just said if you're an essential worker, keep going to work. And
Yeah, and like and there were states on both sides that were being helpful. So like here in Colorado, between the state and the local health department, they told you absolutely everything that you had to do.
yeah,
Everybody had to wear a mask.
yep,
You couldn't go into a grocery store. There's so it was very, 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 very locked down. You go to Florida and they were like, no, you're not allowed to make anybody wear a mask. You're not allowed to require anybody to.
clear guidelines.
That's
Either
exactly
side
right.
of the fence, clear guidelines.
Yeah, so the government was helpful, but in Idaho, they were just like, figure it out, man.
Yeah. And within my industry, the industry is like, well, we're essential. Clearly we're essential. And it's a bunch of egos that are just trying to make sure that they're still getting paid. And I'm out there being like, you won't die if your hair gets long. You will die if you don't have groceries. There's a difference between what's essential. So having all of the experience that I had, I wrote, hey, for our industry, here's an emergency preparedness. This is what you can do. I'm not looking for any information or any payment on anything. I just want to give you guys a direction. If this is a risk, here's how you mitigate it. If here's a risk, here's how you mitigate it. If this is how you're currently staffing, here's a way that you can approach it. Here's what my shop is doing. Here is our entire outlined process. And you can use this as a model. If you need help, please reach out to me. And I just posted it on the Barber Stories website, which was kind of cool because then Don Day, who is the guy who started the Boise Dev website, which is one of the biggest websites in the Treasure Valley, talking about every single business that's coming, all the moving and shaking that's happening in the valley. This guy calls and he's like, so you sounds like you're an expert in your industry. Can we do an article on you? Yeah, I guess. Sure. And now all of a sudden I'm having tons and tons and tons of peers come to me from different cities all throughout Idaho and they're emailing me, how can you cater this towards mine? How can you cater this towards mine? Well, I'm not cutting hair, so let me find out a situation for you. And I was just trying to be helpful for people because I know what it is to be in that situation and it sucks. And I think that that's one of the real lessons that you gave me growing up was Rangers lead the way. You know, you're not going to do this by telling people what to do. You're going to do it by showing them what to do. And that mentality, regardless of the time that I haven't spent in the military, has shaped every aspect of how it is that I run my businesses, do everything. I want to lead by example. So, one of the examples that I've experienced in being a independent business is the fact that like it's just expensive. Nobody wants to make small amounts of money at all. So as soon as you get into a place where you can make money with photography or marketing, you are going to go work for an ad agency and you're going to try and get Nike and Coca-Cola. Like that's it. You're not going for a barber shop in Boise. You're not going for a tattoo shop in Denver. You're expecting those people to do it on their own. But the reality is most of those people aren't me that have an overactive imagination with curiosity and zero kids. So I have nothing but free time and curiosity, and most business owners have a family and all of these other things that they're juggling. And realistically, at the end of the day, I talk for 8 hours a day. I cut hair, but I talk a lot. Um, so I realized that talking is the thing that I do that helps people more than cutting hair. And being able to give people the experiences of, hey, I've been here. Have you considered this? Has been really, really helpful. So for a couple weeks, I started talking to some friends about the business that they were starting, and actually started going out and having coffee with them. And it was like, okay, well, have you considered this? Have you tried this? Have you ever looked into AI? You could set it up like this, and just giving them a couple hours of my time. And I had in one weekend 3 people tell me that I should be a life coach. Or that I should get into some kind of coaching, and that I need to be doing this more consistently. And when I was meeting with the venture capitalist guy back in November, that was one of the other things that he was telling me is you need to work with your mind more than you work with your hands. And after all of this playing with AI, I realized, oh, I can now. I actually can use my mind and help people that are in a very similar situation that I'm in, which is not knowing anything about anything on how to get anything out there, but I know how to utilize the tool, and I know the processes that the tool can help me along with. So now the only thing that I need past that is paying more for the tool so that way I can have more capabilities and then learn those skill sets so that way I can start offering those skill sets to people as well. And that's when I can start doing like AI automation. But right now the idea is let me build your website. I'm not going to try and own your website. Let me just do that for you because I know how to do it, and let me do it in the best platform because I've used GoDaddy, I've used Wix, I've used Blogger, I've used Squarespace, and frankly, for business owners, Squarespace is the best option. Wix is the most robust. It will give you the most customization. GoDaddy is probably the most affordable and most straightforward. Blogger is the most accessible, is the kind word that I'll say. But the user interface on Squarespace is so perfect. It is so perfect. And on top of that, the amount of information that Squarespace puts out there to really understand how to be able to build that stuff. What I want to do is I want to build it and then have you use me as a consultant to teach you how to use the thing that I built. And then I want you to use me as a consultant to show you AI so that way we can have a 2 hour conversation about your entire business and figure out how you can use my subscription services for photos so I can come to you on a regular basis and you can use that as a discounted rate of having a relationship with me to run your business more efficiently. I can give you the marketing side of things and build the tools for you, but now you need to do updates. Don't reach out to me. You know how to do it. And I want to give you that empowerment because for small business owners, we're not doing this because of the free time it gives us. It's the empowerment that it gives us to be able to say, we get to live the lives that we want to live.
Yeah, it's your grandpa Dick. There's he did computer consulting for quite some time, which is it's really hilarious because he reinvented himself several times in his life. I mean, he was a pilot. He was a military jet fighter. And then he was a marketing guy in a paper industry, and but anyway, he did database design, and and like uh, back back in those days, database design was very difficult. Nobody did database. There's a, uh, I mean, even the idea of having an Excel spreadsheet was uh, was uh, pretty data heavy for most businesses at the time. So he would do database design for a company. He'd go in, look at the company, figure out what their data management needs were, but he knew that he was working himself out of a job,
Mm-hmm.
and that in the beginning everybody was going to be like, why am I paying you? Because I don't understand what you're doing. Why am I paying you? Because I'm not seeing anything.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden he would show up and he'd be like, okay, here's what I'm doing. And they're like, wow, how do, they're so, but then he had to train them how to
How
operate
to
the
not need
database,
him.
how to not need
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
And
So every client, and but his iterations were pretty long. I mean, he would be, working with a company for 6 months to a year to, to understand their business, design the database, teach them how to use it, and then move on. Um, and I would imagine the iteration is is condensed now.
Oh, so much so. So much so. I have my first client, she's actually going to be coming over next Thursday and we're going to be working on it. I'm so stoked. She is giving me an opportunity, where it's mutually beneficial for both of us. She knows that I need to time myself. She knows that I need to set certain performance indicators within myself, because and you can probably recognize this, the many positions that you have. If you are going to start a business, you need to know how you are going to deliver it, and you need to know the timeline in which you're going to deliver it. And if you set expectations before knowing what that is, you are a fool. You are an idiot. Because then you're going to get overwhelmed and you're going to underdeliver and your business will fail before it gets off the start. So she is doing a full service experience. We're going to get her entire website built up. We're going to go through and completely reorganize some of the business plans that she has right now because she's only marketing to two demographics and it should be three demographics. We are going to set up a bunch of things and then do a 90-day follow up so that way we can see the impact and get a testimonial. And this will be a baseline opportunity for me, which is I'm excited about. I'm really excited about. But I think the interesting thing, and as I'm hearing you talk to Grandpa's story about this, that's kind of within our lineage. We are problem solvers. We've always been problem solvers. You did it with the TSA, trying to figure out how can we maximize efficiencies with security. Grandpa did it with computer consultations. I'm doing it with small businesses as well. And for me, problem solving has always been easy to recognize where problems are, but trying to figure out how to solve them. That's the reason it would take 6 months to a year. With this tool, it's so fast. It is so fast.
It's so there's you know we I always bring back up homeschooling. But that's, I mean, that was definitely one of the things that we were trying to instill as part of homeschooling was, uh you don't have to have the answer for every problem
You just need to know
when
how to
you're
find
first.
the answer.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, yeah.
There's if you know how to solve problems, it's way better than knowing the answer to the problem.
100%. And the reason I'm getting so excited about I was actually so I journal with my chat GPT. It knows everything that's going on in my life. I have submitted everything to the robot overlords. They know my blood type. Um so the I'm talking to it about how like I'm in this weird hurry up and wait. Like, okay, we're getting deployed, but when? Like when is this actually happening? Because I've been building the foundation for it. I've been building the framework. I know exactly how this business is going to run, and I'm in the exact same place that I was when I first got out of school with the being a barber, because I had built the barber shop in my mind so many times and so meticulously that I could walk through that space without it even existing. And I can walk through the process right now without it existing. I just need someone there so that way it can exist. Um, but the thing that I think is important to take note of in this space is I'm capitalizing on the fact that there is so much resistance. As soon as people stop resisting this, this is not a job. This is not an industry. It is not sustainable for a very long time, and I'm going to continue cutting hair. Uh, but while there is this opportunity to get a lot of output, and be able to really showcase my capabilities and all of these things, I think that I can use the next 3 to 5 years while society is still coming to terms with their comfort levels, that I can at least get myself to the next stage of whatever the next thing is going to be.
Yeah, I think of, you know, yesterday was the commencement ceremony here in Boulder, or not yesterday. I think it was Thursday, so it was the day before yesterday. So all the people that graduated college graduated, right? And there's people walking around all over town with their caps and gowns, and um, but so like uh, I was thinking, they're probably one of the last groups of students who will have done the majority of their schooling without AI. But the class that's starting next year, right? So that's the class of 2030, I guess is what it is.
Yep.
So the class of 2030 um, is very much uh, going to go through their schooling with AI at least available, and more of them are going to start using it. And I was thinking the same thing. It's like universities, I think, would do well to to have someone who's like a guidance counselor, but an AI use counselor, some kind of an academic advisor role that doesn't like the traditional academic advisor has been like, well, you ought to take this class before you take that class, and what electives are you going to take? These are your core class. So the academic advisor would be like helping you fill out the form for what am I going to take this term, this term, this term, this term,
Yeah.
this term. And now I think the academic advisor role uh, should really be like, okay, well, how can I interact with AI? Because what I just described, you can tell your goals to an AI, and an AI can produce your academic calendar.
Now,
That's specifically what you want it to be.
yes and no. And I agree with you that I think that there should be somebody that is kind of an AI advisor at colleges, largely because I have a BSU freshman that I cut who, oh my God, he gives me no hope for the future at all. It can just, ah! So it's fresh on my mind because he came in 2 days ago. So we're talking about how he uses AI in school, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it gets me my answers." I was like, "That's not really how you're supposed to be using it, man." And he's like, "No, no, no. Like I ask it for a marketing plan, and then it gives me a marketing plan." It's like you're missing the point here. It's a tool, but you're cheating yourself out of the experience. You're not getting any marketing plan out of that. He's like, trust me, I think I know. I'm going to school for marketing. I'm like, okay, man. And I've been doing it for the last 15 years. And trust me, that's not how you use that tool. So the whole problem that I think that young people are coming into this situation is the whole issue that I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks is the whole sycophant tendencies of AI, and it's just going to agree with you and it's going to tell you what it is that you want to hear, and I hate that. I cannot stand how validating my AI is. And I do everything I can to make sure that the idea that I have is a good idea. I don't want coal, I want diamonds. Um,
Yeah, Sam Altman just did a he just wrote a piece about that. Maybe it was an interview, but he was talking about that the 4.0 version of ChatGPT was too endearing. It was
yeah,
too, yeah.
yeah.
The
It's
personality is just like, yeah, it agrees with everything you say, kind of sucks up to you.
Yeah, and I've the article that I'm going to be putting out on Monday will be talking specifically about how I figured out a better process than even the initial process that I had. So I have different personas, and those personas are to get something out of me. So the book writing one, that is a anal retentive one. The spiritual study is the grandma, so that way I respect it. But I realized that I was doing things in a way that were me tinkering and then making adjustments, and then having realizations and then making adjustments. So I wanted to cut the fluff, and I was like, look, let's open up all of your parameters. Let's not look at just validation and challenging. Let's not look at soft hands versus direct approach. Let's look at all of it. What parameters are out there? And it opens up all the parameters, and there's like 8 main categories where it has a sliding scale. And as I'm looking through all these, and I'm realizing in the moment, okay, I'm gonna have to like make one adjustment to one of these things, wait a week, and then make an adjustment to that one thing again, see if I like that one thing, and then go down the steps. And I'm gonna do one adjustment on that one thing, and then I'm gonna wait a week and then see. So like this is potentially gonna be a 4 to 6 month process to get this thing the way that I actually want it dialed in. That seems dumb. Hey, have a question for you. Based off of all of your parameters of conversing with me and knowing what you know about me already, how many questions would you need to ask me to get all of the information that you need to understand what my preferences for your communication style with me would be? How many questions would you need? 16. I really only need a question and a follow-up question for each category. If we could do 24, that would be great because that would give me 3 questions per category, but we only need 2. It's like, great. Give me 5 questions per category and give me a list of 40 questions. Give them 5 at a time. Let me answer 5 questions at a time. And at the end of the 40 questions, give me your recommendations of how it is that I should be communicating with you. Done. And now the communication is way more challenging, way less validating, and it's actually helpful in helping me grow as me. And I think that that's one of the things that I have been doing different with this is my whole approach was how can I make conversations in the barbershop better? How can I be more refined in my ideas? And even like Haley and I with the flag whole conversation about what's going on in Idaho, it's made me realize like I'm getting to the whys behind my ideas. It's not that I'm worried about this flag being flown. It's I'm worried about the opportunity of that flag being flown. But now that I've been working on all of these things to be able to help figure out how can I get that actual idea across that I'm really concerned about, where's that core nugget of truth, I'm more capable of saying those things because I want it to improve me, not just spit out work that I'm going to do anyways.
Yeah, there's it's so funny. I sent you a text about ethics, and that's one of the things that I've been thinking of with ethics is, if you make big decisions up front and you ask yourself questions about, oh, okay, well, how would I respond to this? How would I do this? Then, um, then, deciding what is, quote unquote, right or wrong becomes a lot easier if you ask those questions up front. But if you never ask yourself so it's like, we both have in common, that we've got a kind of a baseline, but I certainly don't agree with everything that the Republican Party says. I don't agree with every uh, position that conservative Christians have. There's a lot of things that I don't agree with, and it's but it's the reason isn't because it's like, oh well, I'm just flapping with the wind, and oh I like this and I don't like that, so I support the things I like and I don't support the things that I don't like. It's like, oh okay, well I mean I'm pretty even keeled, I think that people ought to be treated with dignity and respect. So so if that question is always, well, how do I treat this person with dignity and respect? If that's at the very beginning, then the way you're going to respond to people that you disagree with is always going to be different. It's always, and um and it's the same thing with like, oh, okay, well, how do you approach the differences, the perceived differences between science and faith, right? That's a question. How do you deal? Because you have to have a uh, a scientific perspective that can accept your faith, and you have to have a faith perspective that can
I can
accept
accept science.
science.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And but if you don't think of those things, then you're just, the only thing you're doing is you're just like, well, whatever makes sense to me in the moment, and that's populism. That's where that's where we're at now. It's just like, oh, okay, well, whatever is the popular view or whatever I think, seems the best at the time. It goes back to this, uh, you know, uh, you know. Here's an interesting thing. So, like the our species, Homo sapiens. Homo means man, right? Homo. Sapiens is wise or understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So we're a man that has, and that's a gender neutral man, we're a mankind that has wisdom and understanding. So, so, uh, and then you kind of have to ask yourself the question: am I simply a homo, or am I a Homo sapiens? I didn't mean it that way, but it did.
I love that you said that right after you made this whole point of like, if you think about what you're saying before you say it, it'll come across correctly.
There's but like Homo erectus, it was
The
like, here's
man
a
that
man
stands tall.
yeah, a man that stands up and walks on 2 feet.
Yep.
There's and there's uh so that's a physical skill, but what makes us us
Is being homo.
is the oh man.
Yeah, this of all of the episodes that we could get canceled on, here it is. Talking about Homo sapiens. But no, I agree with you. Like you need to be able to have both the capacity of understanding the explainable and the unexplainable. You need to be able to have wisdom to be able to recognize that there are two differences between those two. Because if you don't have that wisdom, okay, I see this thing, I believe this thing, this is the thing, it's all that there is. And it's a very singular vision of existence, and that it just there the older that I get, the more that I realize that there is no such thing as a singular view of existence.
Yeah, there's I one of the classes that I was just in, this hermeneutics thing, it talks a lot about how to understand, and one of the books that I was reading, and I had to write my papers this way, was it talks about their town and our town.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're reading ancient literature, their town is very different than our town.
Yeah.
So you have to be like, oh, okay, you have to put yourself in the world of of the second century BC, and try and understand what that culture was like and what those people um
And how
were
much more
thinking.
confused language was, and culture and customs were at the time. And if you go to the next town over, one, that's probably going to be a bit of a journey. There's enough of a journey that there are cultures that are completely different. So it is us and it is them.
Yeah, and a really good example of that is if you look at Europe compared to the United States. So Europe, much older, evolved, along a different track. So so if you move from like one country to another country in Europe, it's very much like moving from Indiana to Illinois or whatever in terms of geography. But there, you're going from speaking French to speaking Spanish, and then to speaking Belgique, and uh, so in the older societies, language was more complex. But the reason language was more complex is because you only had to talk with the people who were right around you.
Mm-hmm.
So since you were only talking with the people right around you, the people on the other side of the hill, they figured out a completely different way to talk. And so you end up with Europe, which is, geographically a little bit smaller, but pretty on par with the, geography of the US in terms of like space. But we have like pretty much one language and then a little bit of two others. Um, but pretty much everybody at every state speaks English, which is weird because that's only one of the languages from Europe. So but we became a society that, and maybe this is one of the reasons why we tend to think of ourselves as having a unified culture, because we speak a single language. Um, but we really don't have a unified culture in the U.S. There's very specific regional cultures across the U.S.
Well, I was even talking this morning. There was a kid who was on my live stream that was asking where I was from, and I was like, I live in Idaho, but I grew up in North Georgia. He's like, where at? I was like, really small podunk town. If you know where Atlanta's at, there's a little town outside of Atlanta called Gainesville, little town outside of Gainesville called Dahlonega. And he's like, I live in Gainesville. So I just wind up talking to this kid from Gainesville. He's 25, and he mentioned the Gainesville town square. And I was like, oh man, town square. I haven't thought about town square in a really long time. And town squares are really interesting because you see those a lot in the South. And the reason that they're so popular is you'd have the courthouse, and then there would be roads on all sides of the courthouse, and then those roads would have the main businesses. So literally the courthouse was the town square center, and then the city was built out from that. And you had the heart of the community, and that's one of the things that's very culturally relevant in the South. But as America progressed westward, you started having main streets because main streets were the thoroughfares. And the types of communities were being different because you were being spread out a little bit more off of the main street instead of in the town square. And I just wound up talking about this as a rant for like 3 minutes, and he had never known the history of town squares. I was like, yeah, Dahloneg's town square was super cool. And we don't have those in the Northwest. That's not part of our culture up here. We are just like, get away from me.
I'm trying to remember the name of the barber shop that was on the town square there. Um, and it was so funny because, I mean, there'd be like parades. So they'd have like the Little League parade and the
Yeah.
this parade and that parade. So I'd be in getting my hair cut, and a parade would come by, and we'd like literally all go outside with the the cape on, and the barbers are sitting there, scissors in hand, and we're like, yeah, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Waving.
It's a
And
slice of Americana right there.
it's so yeah, so much. And like in the Midwest, there that the town that I grew up in, Taylorville, Illinois, the courthouse was in the center of our uh, town as well, the town square, and it had a clock,
Yeah.
and it had a clock that chimed, and that's literally how we would like know the time of the day. And like we had a rule, we had to be sitting at the table with your hands washed by 6 o'clock. So uh and then it evolved to like the street lights. So like when the street lights came on, we had to go home. That was the that was the
That was the indicator.
that was the indicator. So as soon as the street light, like, oh, I'll see you later, man. Street lights are coming on.
It's funny. That's I was we were driving by and just thinking of like the generational shifts of what's we get to grow up with and what you got to grow up with and what kids nowadays get to grow up with. We were driving out and saw like a gang of kids, like a whole gaggle of kids in the middle of a school day just riding their bikes down Eagle Road. I'm like, where are these kids' parents? And I don't mean like teenagers, I mean like 8 and 9 year olds. And in the back of my mind, all I can think of is like, man, that's so cool. They get to do what I got to do. But also, where the fuck are their parents?
Oh man,
Yeah,
there's a
you just don't have the space and ability to trust people. Well, I'm sure that there is the capacity of trust, but I would imagine that parents nowadays have a much higher stress level than you did when I was the age of being able to wander out aimlessly.
yeah, there's and to be honest, there I was way more comfortable with you guys, going out on your own than your mom was. Your mom was like she was uncomfortable with it very, very, very much. There's
Yeah,
uh
as long as we don't die, we're good.
yeah, that's kind of
Yeah,
I'm like,
I,
whatever. I mean, they're gonna, but like, there was this time during the '70s where people started getting worried about creepers, like,
it's 10
like,
o'clock. Do you know where your children are?
yeah, abducting your children,
Yep.
and it's like there was this fear of abduction went like a wave across the entire country where parents all of a sudden were afraid that someone was going to steal their children and they take them to some sweatshop uh Thailand or something like that, and and I think that there was a whole lot of fear, but there was probably just a couple of abductions. But the thing is the news media was starting to come into play, and that's where
Mm-hmm.
we're at now. It's
Yep.
like, so some kid would get abducted in California, and it'd be on the news like all over the entire country.
Yeah, and then people in Mississippi are like, "Well, it happened in California. It can happen here."
That's exactly right. And that's the same thing that we're doing now with mass shootings. It's the self-fulfilling prophecy to where there's people see it and they hear about it all the time, and now there's all these people who are like, oh man, I'm going to be a copycat killer or whatever. um and and uh and it's like we require people to be traumatized for someone else's trauma.
Yeah, yeah. That's I'm literally looking right now. I was like, surprisingly, I don't think that I've heard of a lot of mass shootings recently. And I don't know if it's just because of what I've been paying attention to or if I just haven't seen anything. And if I remember right, like a mass shooting is more than four victims,
I
correct?
thought it was three.
Three
I
or
thought it was
more?
three or more. And the problem is a lot of gang violence in inner
In
cities
Yeah.
is a drive-by shooting between two criminal gangs is way different than a single lone shooter walking into an elementary school, and just brutally killing um, small children, or even there's I think we talked last time about Timothy McVeigh,
Yeah.
and there's,
OKC.
who's his guy, like Nichols or Terry Nichols, I think is the other guy. I could be wrong, but he's living here in Colorado too. There's at the AdMax in Florence.
Well, and I just looked it up. For for the small amount of credit that I will give America, April 17th was the last mass shooting. So we've almost made it a whole month. We have almost Don't fuck this one up, America. Please. Let's just go a month.
we've gone 42 days without an injury on this work site.
Come on. But and I agree. I think that when, people wind up seeing it, they do get worried that it is going to happen to them a little bit more. And that's one of the interesting things that I like. I feel safe in Idaho. And I feel very safe in Idaho because it's the mentality of a well-armed society is a polite society. I have a
Yeah,
lot of
there's
sharp, pointy things. People
wasn't
people
there a
aren't mean.
shooting at the mall in Boise, and there was somebody who was armed there that took the guy out or something?
Uh, the buddy that you know of mine was that person.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
nice.
And actually
Sometimes
that
things just work out.
oh man, getting to know the people that I know, I was stoked. I was so stoked because he winds up telling me about it. And I asked him, I was like, hey man, like what is going on? Like I never thought that this would happen in Boise. And yeah, so it's a guy who shot up the town square mall. It was a horrible thing. Like that happened in my hometown. That's horrifying. Talking to my buddy who's on BPD. Hey, what's going on? Like what's something to know? He's like, uh yeah, that was me. I'm like, yeah, yeah. Like, I had to go to the hospital and do a whole bunch of paperwork. It's not nearly as fun as you think it is. I'm like, dude, you're a fucking hero, man. You're the thing. But he's not going to get that kind of recognition, nor would he want that recognition because he is the guy that he is, and he's just an awesome guy in general. Another funny story about him. So Haley and we're on a date one night and we're leaving downtown Boise. We're about to get on the connector, and we see cops swarming one of the parking garages. And there's a guy who's just like this, looking up, and he's got full SWAT gear, AR, everything on the middle of the street corner of Front and Ninth. And we're like, that's my buddy. That's my buddy. Holy crap. And Haley looks at me and she's like, he is hot in all of his SWAT gear. Like, he is just a unit of a man. And when he
I'm like,
was
oh, we
like
got to get out
literally
of here, man.
on it. So apparently there was this guy in Garden City, gotten an armed dispute with his significant other, wound up shooting this person and then fleeing. And the police were chasing him, chased him to a parking garage. Parking garage, like, vacated, but we wound up pulling around and watching this entire thing because why wouldn't we? Uh, right? We're on a date. It's making the date more exciting. So as we're like going over, getting some drinks, watching this whole thing happening, we see one of the other cops come by and he pops a drone up in the air and he flies the drone, goes in and out of every single level to try and find where the dude is at. Then you see them have a little bit of commotion, and then like five these dudes all go up one stairwell, five dudes go up another stairwell. It's this whole coordinated effort. And my buddy is like front and center of all of it. Just like, yeah. I actually like seeing this stuff because there's a bad guy out there, and there are arguably good guys that are out getting the bad guy. We've got the white blood cells.
And this kind of comes full circle because that takes me back to the GWAT generation. And, because he's a member of the GWAT generation,
Yeah.
right? And, and they are so impressive.
Oh man, so much
So,
so. And he especially, like, this is a guy who what I think is really interesting, for the context of listeners, because you know this, and I don't know how much of this you actually knew, but he and I had the exact same homeschool education for the exact same years.
oh,
Uh,
wow.
so he used the same accelerated learning program out of Allentown. So when he and I met as teenagers at the venue, he was like the first person in Boise that I could actually relate with and get along with. And as soon as he was old enough, I remember you teaching me how to shoot, and you taught me with your 45. That was a full steel cannon of a pistol that almost broke my nose because you're like, don't limp wrist it. Boom, limp wrist. What's that do? thinking that I'm going to understand what the ranger guys understand when you say don't limp wrist it to your 16-year-old.
But I mean, it's not like I was a gun collector, you know. I mean, I had my gun. That was my
Right.
gun.
So he was a gun collector. And after you gave me that horrible first experience, he's like, let's try a couple of things. Here's a 22, here's a 9, here's a 308, here's a 40, here's a 45. Let's go through all these things. And got a job with local firearms sales, like impact guns. Back it used to be
Okay,
shooting
yeah, I
world.
remember them.
Yep. After that, got a job with a company here in town called Tactical Development that was doing a bunch of really cool 22 conversions for larger calibers. Then he joined the Navy. And he was doing so well in the Navy that he had the choice of, do I go the SEALs route or do I go into leadership and instructors route? And he was doing the SEALs training and had an opportunity that took him in another path. But that also let him get out after a few years, because if he had gone the SEALs route, he would have gone full career for sure. But then when he left the military, he still wanted to serve. He still wanted to protect people. He has always wanted to be a shield for people. So then he got onto BPD. And when everybody is talking about, oh, defund the police, and I'm telling every one of my friends, like, no, give them more money and give them better training, he's one of the first cops that actually gets the kind of reform that the left really wants to see out of law enforcement, which is he's going out with a social worker. His partner is a social worker. They're dealing with mental health issues in the community, and he is making some of the greatest changes in Boise for any cops on the force, in my opinion. I think it's amazing what he does. And then on top of it, he's a unit of a man who stops shooters.
It's the whole there's peace through superior firepower.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way you. And this is what it just we were talking. I think it was before we started recording, but there's it just frustrates me that we're so at odds with Russia, because it's like when we defeated communism, how on earth did we not be, like, embrace those guys, help them to develop, because they are very capitalist. I mean, uh, but how on earth we're just like, oh well, and you want to know how it was? This is, what caused it? Freaking NATO.
Yeah.
We were like, we can't be friends with them, because if we're friends with them, then there's no reason for NATO to exist. And I'm like, why on earth do we just like want to take and like, when we were talking about the different Veterans Day and the Victory Day that Russia has, uh,
Because they just celebrated that, what, 2 days ago?
it was this last week.
Okay.
There's but they you want to talk about a nation that gave, a
Millions
full
and
measure
yeah.
during World War II, and they, they were like, we're at war, we're going to war, and we're sticking to this to the end. And I mean, they lost so many people, way more than we did, way more than, like, literally they lost more than all the other nations combined. It was just really, really. So here's this country that at least we shared some values with. We both hated fascists and Nazis. So there's and they're just their values. They're very patriotic people. Russians love Russia.
But their
You know,
town is their town and our town is our town.
that's exactly right.
Yep.
That's exactly right. And we're like, and we have to be a them versus us, them versus us. It's the same thing with China. It's
Mm-hmm.
like we're willing to go to war with China just so that Taiwan can sell us computer chips. Well, if China took over Taiwan, we would still buy Taiwanese computer chips. We just, you know, they would just be, they would have to filter it through the Chinese Communist Party or
It could
whatever.
be argued there might be a little bit more spyware.
Could be,
Could
could be,
be,
but
maybe.
but but not really, because I mean, all our phones are coming from China now. All our computers are coming from China
But the
now.
argument still remains.
Yeah, yeah, but how is it more dangerous than a war? To
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah, okay.
there's it's like I am not committed to the freedom of the Taiwanese people. That's just not, that is, that's not.
That's not the dog that you're going to throw into a fight.
Yeah, yeah. And we need, that's one of the other things about it. One of the reasons why I'm so eager for Gen Xers and millennials to get into leadership, because it's like, you know people, you know we're stuck on the same broken record that John McCain was stuck on. John McCain and Lindsey Graham and all these guys who are just like, if we don't have a war, then our economy's not gonna do so well. It's like, well, how about if we just like start manufacturing things again? Can we make television sets?
Yep.
There's
Yeah, we
there.
don't have to be the military industrial complex. Our biggest exports don't need to be Raytheon and Boeing, and we certainly don't need to have all of that military might be the way that we make our billions of dollars. We could just sell shirts.
Yeah. And speaking of shirts, it's like Anduril Industries. There's the CEO who
Are they
always
making
wears.
shirts now?
Say again?
Are they making shirts?
No, but their CEO is always wearing Hawaiian shirts. And
Ah,
so every time you see that guy, he's wearing a Aloha shirt. There,
oh, that that tracks for other reasons, unfortunately.
but he's like, hey, you know what we need? We need to make inexpensive munitions, and we don't need to fight the world's wars. We need to sell them guns so that they can fight their wars.
Yep.
And and he's building a big business off of it. And I'm like, man, there's got to be some other industry. There's it's like, can't we make blue jeans again?
Well,
Maybe.
so Origin out of Maine, they're a great company. I don't know if you follow them at all. They do a lot with Jocko Willink, and he is a Navy SEAL guy. He's really, really
Yeah, I
impressive.
don't know the company, but I do know Jocko.
Yeah, he's got some pretty impressive leadership philosophies, and um, he is a determined man. And
He sent a picture of his watch covered in sweat every morning.
so funny. So they're a manufacturing company out of Maine that hires at great wages, makes great products. And going back to like when COVID happened, they shifted all of their operations towards building high quality masks. They used this was back when we still didn't know anything about anything, and they were just trying. It was like when you were doing the 9-line t-shirt masks. And they made masks out of the same material that they do their jujitsu gis out of, and they were awesome. They sucked to breathe out of, but they were awesome. And I've been watching them as a company grow over the last few years, and they're doing really high end footwear. They're doing really high end denim. They've got some really great American sourced cotton materials that are American made manufacturing, and it's just textiles. But they have grown huge. And the video that the Origin put out to respond to the AI video that China's propaganda machine
Yeah,
put
yeah, I saw
out.
that video. It's pretty funny.
Oh, the Chinese one?
Yeah.
So the AI video, it is funny. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the world's view of what American workforce looks like. Origin's response video of their hardworking employees busting their asses. Oh man, there's not a better model to say like we need more of this. I want one of those in every single state.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and in terms of the whole Veterans Day parade thing, uh, that would be an interesting thing to have in a Veterans Day parade, is to showcase veteran businesses.
Yep.
There's uh, because there's a lot, Black Rifle Coffee Company. There's just all there are all kinds of stories of the same people that I was talking about, the GWAT generation, who came back from Iraq and Afghanistan and used their GI Bill, used their benefits to their benefits and their networks, so they got investors, and now they've got great businesses. Um, and there's it would be interesting to see that on display, I think.
One of the going back to like the CEO of Fiverr of what he was talking about, where easy is a non-starter, hard is easy, impossible is hard. I was talking to somebody at the shop about like, okay, what things are scalable right now? Because did I tell you about Bitch Calm Down?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got my first shirt that's going to be showing up on Monday, and I'm going to start doing a an apparel marketing campaign just so I can say I've done an apparel marketing campaign, and I'm doing a line of apparel. I'm making one-off shirts. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I realized, oh man, there are going to be so many people that do this. There are going to be so many people that create their own brands.
Yeah,
Uh,
and just like you were talking about that origin company, there's now is the time to start
a
the
manufacturing
manufacturing thing.
company
Yeah,
or a silk
making.
screening company. Because what I did is I went to Sticker Mule and it's like I'm getting a one-off shirt made for 20 bucks. That's enough for me to buy a shirt for me, and that's the price of what I would buy a shirt. But okay, how hard could it be to run a silk screening company for all of these people that now have access to branding themselves and making one-off shirts? Or are you going to do the silk screening, or you want to do the manufacturing for the people that are going to start doing the silk screening because they're going to need shirts to supply their orders?
Exactly
And
right. And like I was looking at my clothes the other day, and like all my t-shirts are made in they're all made abroad, but it's amazing how many of them are made in China, in Vietnam, in so there's there again there's all our t-shirts take a trip across the Pacific Ocean.
mhm,
And there's and that's so crazy, and that's what we I think is getting lost in the messaging of the whole tariff thing, because the benefit of the tariffs is not the money that we're going to get on these tariffs. That's actually going to be a problem. That extra money is going to make things cost more. That extra money is going to make
it's going to cause
you know
inflation.
Yeah, and like all the things that we've been getting from China, it's either going to be more expensive or we're not going to get them, and that's why orders coming out of China are just drying up. But so the tariffs are going to make it harder, but the response to that pain is, well, I guess we're going to have to make it ourselves. And that's the benefit. The benefit is, we've been talking since Jimmy Carter was president, for crying out loud. We've been talking about how do we preserve American jobs? We need to keep American manufacturing. And we were saying we were going to keep American manufacturing while everybody's like leaving, and we never kept it. And since we didn't keep it, now it's all gone.
Mhm.
And we're like, oh well, we can't produce it. It's like we can't produce our own solar panels, even though we've got all the materials that are needed to make solar panels in the U.S. But we've just made it too difficult to mine, and we can't get access. So we're like, oh well, we're super earth friendly. So what we're going to do is we're going to buy from
The people
China,
that
because
are also doing the things that we don't want to do, and then having them ship it halfway across the world, which is really great for a carbon offset.
yeah. So they're mining it in a more destructive way for the planet because they don't have any of the oversight that we've got, and you've got to add the carbon cost of shipping it across the ocean, and then you take the national security aspect of there's it's like there's you think we're not going to if we were to horribly, hopefully we don't, but if we were to end up in a hot war with China, which would really 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 suck, there's
You forgot a couple reallys.
I know, man, it's like, and everybody's like, China is our biggest threat, we've got to be ready to kick their ass. It's like, maybe we could be like, what do we can share the earth.
Yeah,
It's big.
yeah.
You guys do your thing. We're gonna do our thing. We got to make somehow we've got to make it so that it's a better deal for us than it is right now, right? Because we're just getting screwed. So whatever. Let's figure out how to share the world. And
Can you just please use lube? Like that's all we're asking.
but
Be slightly more gentle.
goodness gracious. But anyway, we're gonna
We're gonna solve
drive
the world
blindly off
problem.
that cliff.
Yeah, yeah. That's the fool's errand, is just keep going down that rabbit hole and see where it goes.
there's there's I'm the military traditionalist that really doesn't want any wars anywhere.
I I think that I think this is probably a good place that we can end the episode. Is we don't want war, and one here's the two things that we can agree on: we don't want war, and we're homos. Yeah, that's what we can agree on.
This is the Homo Warrius episode.
And on that note, I'm going to appreciate all of you who have been paying attention for the last couple of hours, that have been listening to us. And if this is your first time listening to the Supper Talk podcast, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming on this really weird episode. You should go back a couple of episodes and see what some of the other ones are like too. But if you like this one, we really would appreciate if you could either like this episode, share it with your friends. If you can leave a review on Spotify, we would really appreciate it. It does help get the podcast pushed out to even more people to help find us. And if you know anyone who is having a struggle with a family member and you think that this podcast would be a good benefit for them, so that way they can see that there's an example of, you don't have to agree on everything to still have family in your life, we would love for you to share this message with them, because that's what Supper Talk is about, is just trying to bridge gaps between people. So thank you again very much for listening to us, and I will see you next time, probably next week on Wednesday instead of Saturday. But be well all.
Peace. Cheers.